you guys, welcome to another interview with another professional wrestler. But today, he's more than a professional wrestler. He is MMA fighter, also a pro wrestler, and also a combat sport analyst. But in the wrestling world, he goes by the name of Blake, the Bulletproof Troop. So let's get into it, shall we? Okay. So much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on with you, brother. I love to see people go after the things that they're passionate about and don't let anything hold them back. So excited to be here with you, brother.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. So I read somewhere that you started your professional wrestling career back in 2020. What?
Correct. So I began training in 2020 during COVID. I moved to Florida to pursue professional wrestling training full time. Okay. And then I made my debut October of 2021 for the United Wrestling Network.
Oh, wow. Okay. But before your wrestling career, I read somewhere that you were like an MMA and a combat sport analyst.
Correct. So I began fighting professionally in 2014. So I've been fighting for about 12 years professionally, training for about 25.
Wow.
And when COVID happened, I decided to focus the entirety of my efforts into professional wrestling because I wasn't sure when the world was going to come back to normal and I was going to be able to get back to fighting and competing full time. So I switched into professional wrestling, and when that happened, I also became a combat sports analyst for Lights Out Extreme Fighting.
Okay.
And did that for several years, and then eventually made my way back into the ring. I'll talk about that later. But so fighting since 2014 professionally, and then doing professional wrestling since 2021.
So how did you get into the MMA side of fighting?
So there's a whole long story about it. The way I began training was freshman year of high school in about 2001, maybe 2000. I had a family friend I was really close with who was overweight, and he asked me if I would be interested in doing kickboxing classes with him to lose weight.
Okay.
And so I was like, yeah, bro, let's do it. I was a big brother and I had a big brother, so I was used to playing rough. I liked fighting games and so forth. And I really enjoyed it. And I'm from Los Angeles originally, and that is where the Gracie family that created Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu landed when they came to America. So Los Angeles and Southern California was one of the really big hot spots for combat sports very, very early on in its growth, almost in its adolescence or its infancy. And we just happened to go to a gym that had a bunch of legit people, including black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And back then, now you could throw a baseball and hit a Jiu-Jitsu school. Back then, it was not easy to find. Okay. But because I was in Los Angeles, they were around, and I went to do kickboxing class with my buddy who was overweight, fell in love with kickboxing. And it was I don't want to call it cardio kickboxing because now there's just basic cardio kickboxing where it's not at all, I don't want to say not at all street effective or competition effective, but very little transferability. But this was like legitimate kickboxing. Stuck around for a grappling class one day and loved that. And I can even rewind a little further back where I grew up a huge professional wrestling fan. I was born in 87, so the Attitude Era, Stone Cold Steve Austin, DX, The Rock, WCW, NWO, it's all the stuff I grew up on. And I was a massive professional wrestling fan growing up. And in the late 90s, let's say maybe 98, 99 or so, it started to come out and become common knowledge that professional wrestling was not legitimate sports competition. Mm-hmm. And it broke a young 12-year-old or however old Blake's heart. And around this time, UFC was starting to pick up some steam. It had been around for a while, and I knew about it, and I had seen it before. But in the late 90s, early 2000s, it started becoming a little bit more mainstream where they had more rules and weight classes and things where it was going from, and early on they called it like human cockfighting, where dude, you could punch a dude in the dick. The rules were wild, like, which
Yeah.
I like. I'm a kind of a fan of the old school rules in the sense of
Wow.
it's a fight, and a bit of a purist. I don't like gloves. But by the late 90s, 2000s, it was starting to become, it was moving its way towards mainstream where like weight classes and presented like a legitimate sport instead of just people fighting each other like it was early on. And so it stole my heart. And I went from growing up wanting to be WWE world champion, then found out wrestling wasn't a legitimate sports competition, broke my heart, to want to be UFC world champion.
Okay.
And so these two different career things that I'm doing now have really been my childhood dreams that I've eventually have manifested and created into my adult reality. So it's kind of, hopefully that answers your question on how I got into the fighting, and then also kind of the background on where the desire to be a competitive athlete. I grew up being an athlete my entire life. Um, but that I wanted to grow up and be WWF when I grew up, but WWE world champion, and then later on UFC world champion. Um, which I'll talk about later, how that impacted my whole creation of Bulletproof Troop
Okay.
and this whole character that I have now. We can talk about that in a segment.
Yeah.
That's how I got into MMA.
So, may I ask you what was your record in the MMA world?
My current record is 9-6-1.
Okay.
Um, my last loss was in September of 2019, so I haven't lost a fight in 7 years. Um, my last fight was for K1 in Tokyo, Japan. I fought a guy named Cena Caribbean, and that's some 9 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw, or 1 no contest. And my fight in Japan was a no contest because my opponent and I fouled. He fouled me, and I fouled him back. And then during the break, he came over talking shit, and like the referee's looked, he scratched me in the eye. He came over like talking shit, and I thought he was gonna swing on me, so I swung on him. And it was just a whole like melee in the ring, and like we got in a fight at the press conference, we got in a fight at the rules meeting, and then we got in a fight during a break during the fight, and they just got us out of the ring. Like, we don't even know what to do with this right now. We will announce a official decision for this within a few days. And it took them a few weeks to even figure out what exactly they were going to do. But so 9 wins, 6 losses, and 1 no contest. And of those 9 wins, all of them are finishes.
Okay.
8 of those coming in the first round.
Wow. That is awesome.
And like I said, the last loss was September of 2019. Haven't lost in 7 years. I want to say that I've gone, let me see, like 5. I've had 7 fights. Of my last 7 fights, I lost 1. On
Okay.
television, co-main event for a title.
Wow. So, so are you still active with the MMA?
So I'm currently the Lights Out Extreme Fighting heavyweight champion and their commentator as well. And I competed in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu World Championship tournament this past May and took
Okay.
home gold in the black belt division. So I would say yes and no. To be fully, my last MMA fight was September 7th of 2025.
Okay.
So I'm moderately active. I would definitely fight again, and I'm trying to, in a perfect world, I would be the first guy signed to the UFC and the WWE simultaneously. Brock did both, but he didn't do them at the same time. And now that the UFC and the WWE are owned by the same company, I'm in a unique position to be a potential crossover star for both brands and help bridge the audience gap between professional wrestling fans and fight fans. Bring fight fans over to watch me wrestle, and then bring wrestling fans over to watch me fight. Like I said, in a perfect world, so I'm moderately active, but I would say the main focus of my training and just about everything has been on professional wrestling, pretty much since January of 2025, minus 3 months to train for that fight I had in Japan. So the last 19 months, 3 months that was geared towards fighting. I'm actually, let's say 5 months, because I had that jiu-jitsu tournament that I got ready for. So 5 of the last 19 months have been related to competition and combat sports. And then, you know, 15 or so, 14 of the last months have been focused on professional wrestling training, which I now train with a guy named Booker T, who's a two-time WWE Hall of Famer
Oh,
in Houston, Texas, out of Reality of Wrestling.
so how was it transitioning from MMA to the wrestling, professional wrestling?
So I would say interesting in a variety of different ways because they're very similar, but at the same time, they're very different. Um, in terms of the move set and doing moves and things, I would say, excuse me, I would say doing the moves has been a fairly easy transition over because I'm used to manipulating bodies. And if it's a person who doesn't want me to do it to them, it's very easy to do it with a person who does it in terms of guiding them and showing them where I want to take them and so forth. Um, so move wise, I thought it was fairly easy. In terms of slowing down and putting on a show, because in competition like fighting, it's me versus the other guy.
Yeah,
In professional wrestling, it's me and this guy trying to get the crowd behind us
yeah,
or
oh
get
yeah,
the
yeah,
crowd
yeah,
behind our match. So significantly different focus on what we're doing, and like to have a game plan for fights, absolutely. But having a game plan for a fight and working in the moment and reacting and so forth is a lot different than planning out a whole choreographed sequence to then go perform. And then another big thing that is significantly different is the politics and the way that a lot of traditions and the way things operate there. In fighting, you come out and you talk some shit and you like build hype around the fight. Pro wrestling does not work like that. Everything's like talked about ahead of time, and I came into professional wrestling using the same, let's say, the same recipe that I had been using in combat sports that was extremely successful for me. And I brought that over to a new kitchen, and it did not work out as I had anticipated. In fact, it probably put me in a hole that I'm still climbing myself out of.
okay.
But so I would say it's been a variety of different things in terms of some of it being easy and some of it being difficult. In fighting, if you're good and you smash people, nobody can hold you back.
Yeah,
Or like you can only hold you back so much. Like in professional wrestling, I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, I'm being held back," but like if important people don't like you, you may never get an opportunity. And I'm not
yeah,
sitting here
yeah,
saying, "Oh, that's what's happened to me," but like I definitely put myself in a precarious position by operating with the same techniques and strategies that had worked for me in combat sports. But I love both. They're very different. Something that's also very different is in combat sports, I go in and compete against another man and I win, and that shit feels fucking good as a sports competitor and as like an alpha male.
oh
In
yeah,
pro wrestling, you pin somebody like it don't mean shit because that's it was decided with the fucking back.
yeah,
Um, so I would say it's a variety of different things where it's both are very tough on the body, different type of tough in terms of the accumulated mileage that occurs in training and then competition or performance or however you want to put that. Um, but I enjoy both. And I think my ability to do both has been one of my major advantages in both sides of in both venues of my career in terms of professional wrestling and combat sports.
so you've been in both ring, you've been in the MMA cage and you've been in the wrestling ring. What is it like taking a bump in each ring?
Um, so people think that a professional wrestling ring, like, oh, it's got a big spring under it, so soft and blah blah blah. Like most rings don't necessarily have a spring, and the ones that do, it doesn't cushion it like a fucking mattress or something. You're basically slamming down on plywood with like maybe 2 inches of mat. The thing about a professional wrestling ring compared to a combat sports ring is there's no give in a combat sports ring. You get slammed like a boxing ring or a mixed martial arts cage. There's no give. You slam down, it's like hitting a planet. A little nicer than concrete, but you come down to professional wrestling ring where the boards are loose it does absorb a lot of the impact. Another big difference with the two is in professional wrestling, people lay you down so that you come down ideally flat, and it's much
Yeah.
easier to absorb that impact. Combat sports do you know, it might get dumped on your head. Like, guys,
Yeah.
I'm going to put you down as difficult as I can, and I'm going to try to land on top of that dude.
Ooh.
So, in terms of, but at the same time, how many of those do you take in a fight and stuff versus how many bumps you take in a pro wrestling match?
Yeah.
So, like, again, very different in terms of the mileage. But I would much rather get power bombed in a professional wrestling ring than get double leg lift slammed in a mixed martial arts cage. 10 out of 10 every day of the week. I would take that.
And earlier you mentioned that you were a big fan of the WWF and the WCW. So did you have a favorite? Were you a WCW guy or were you a WWF guy?
You know, I liked both. And at the Monday Night Wars, I was one of the people flipping back and forth.
I did too.
But if I had to pick a side, I would say WWF, WWE. With Stone Cold was growing up was my absolute favorite. Now that I'm a full grown adult, I'd say The Rock's my favorite. Looking back and all the different things that he's done,
Yeah.
and if I had to pick a third, I would say Generation X and like group them into a single third. Maybe Sting as like a fourth. But so I feel like WWF and the Attitude Era of professional wrestling was, if I had to pick a side, that's, you know, and I'm not dogging WCW. WCW was great and did like NWO, I think was the first major really fucking badass click, you know,
Oh
like,
yeah, it was. It was.
but if I had to pick a side, I'd say WWF, WWE. What about you, my man?
That you trained with Booker T.
Correct.
But I read somewhere that when you started the wrestling training, one of your trainers were Matt Seidel.
Correct. So I moved to Florida in December of 2020 during COVID, and I went out and I trained with a guy named Chris Silvio and Matt Seidel in Tampa, Florida. I moved my whole life out there to train with them. Trained out there until March of 2024. I lived out there and trained out there so for 3.5 years. And then I moved back to California to take a fight. And then after that fight, I moved to Houston, Texas to train with Booker T, two-time WWE Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
At his Reality of Wrestling, which in my opinion, if someone is trying to learn television wrestling, particularly for WWE, it's the best place that you could do it outside of WWE Performance Center. So I moved out there basically very, very end of 2024. So I'd say my first day there was January 1st, 2025. And I've basically been there since then, minus 3 months that I trained for that fight in Japan.
But I read somewhere that you also wrestled for the NWA Power.
Correct. Yeah, so I used to be, Jack Stain was a tag team partner of mine. And my last match with the National Wrestling Alliance was against Mike Mondo for the national heavyweight title.
Oh, wow. So how did you
Yeah, I
get
competed for that title several times. The first time I competed for it was in a fatal four-way with Scion, Burtsill, and Tom Latimer. And I came very close to winning it. Latimer ended up catching me slipping, hit me with his finish, and pinned me. But I came very close to winning at that time. And then again, with Mike Mondo. And then Jack Stain, rest in peace, was my tag team partner for probably a year and change. And him and I competed for the North American or United States tag team titles 3 or 4 times against the Country Gentlemen or what is their name? I think it's a Country Gentleman. I don't know why I can't think of their name right now.
Okay.
But so I've competed and I've also competed for Reality of Wrestling's Glory Heavyweight Championship, which is they have 2 television shows, Glory and Platinum.
Okay.
Competed against AJ Francis in Reality of Wrestling for that title.
Wow. Okay.
What other titles have I competed for? Those are the big shows. I've competed for a few on smaller circuits, but those are the 2 big ones that I've competed for.
That is pretty cool. So, how did you get involved with ROW?
So, Reality of Wrestling is Booker T's promotion, and that's
Yeah.
also the name of his school. I got involved, or like I got put on there because I moved my whole life there, and I still live there. I'm actually going to drive there later today. I'm in Austin, Texas, but I'm going to try and get back in time for training tonight at Reality of Wrestling. But so I went in there and I've been training and showing and getting better, and eventually got put on television with them. Uh, they actually hit me up yesterday about getting a match on the televised show for Saturday, but
Ooh.
unfortunately, I won't be in town. My last match for Reality of Wrestling was against the Mog Squad,
Okay.
Jimmy Blackhouse, Cappuccino Jones, and I can't think of who the other person was who wasn't in the match. But so some WWE ID talent, and I tag teamed with Clay Roberts, who, if you don't know about Clay Roberts out of Reality Wrestling, check him out. He just had an incredible match against Thatcher. What's Timothy Thatcher,
Or,
who's like a
okay.
catch wrestling style guy. And then I think of my other tag team partner. But so I got put on at Reality Wrestling by moving my whole life there. It's twice that I've moved my entire life for professional wrestling. I'm that invested in my dreams and my belief in this all happening. But so that's how I got on in reality, or at ROW.
Pretty nice. So let's get into how did you come up with the persona of Blake the Bulletproof Troop?
So interesting. So my name's Blake Troop, and then my nickname in combat sports was Bulletproof. So
Okay.
Blake Bulletproof Troop. I just dropped Blake off and became Bulletproof Troop. Instead of saying Blake Bulletproof Troop, cut off Blake Bulletproof Troop. And I thought it was very fitting. Troop's my real last name. I was born on my birth certificate, and so having a cool last name like that,
Yes, it
I
is.
ran with that as well. And in professional wrestling, a lot of guys have what we call a gimmick or a character
Yeah.
that's like a made up whatever. Bulletproof Troop's not a made up character. Blake Bulletproof Troop gets in the cage and fights. Blake Bulletproof Troop gets in the cage and wrestles. Same guy comes out, same armor, same everything. Where I basically brought myself over and crossed over into
The wrestling world.
on both sides, where it's not creating some type of new thing. And I think that's also one of my advantages in being a potential crossover star is it's not like The Rock and Dwayne Johnson. You know what I'm saying? Where it's two different, I don't want to say they're different people, it's the same person.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But like where I was able to, but I just got creative with how to create or how to, well, so here's how I built Bulletproof Troop. Back in, let's say 2015, I was watching guys like Conor McGregor get massive pushes, favorable matchups, more money, a lot of mic time, and so forth. Conor McGregor's a perfect example. CM Punk's another great example. CM Punk did not make it to the UFC because of his fight accolades. And I'm not 100% not a dig on CM Punk. I have a ton of respect for the guy for getting inside of the cage and competing multiple times and like really trying it,
Oh
but
yeah.
CM Punk didn't get there because of his fight accolades. And I'm not digging him for that again. I'm going to say that. CM Punk got there because he puts asses in seats and sells pay-per-views
Yeah.
because he's entertaining. Conor McGregor can fight, but Conor's Conor because he's entertaining. Tito Ortiz, Chael Sonnen, there's a bunch of guys that did things. Muhammad Ali's another perfect example of guys that had entertainment around their appearances. And as a result, I think got some special treatment or like I think Conor got favorable matchups. Conor likes fighting strikers that are shorter than him. He got catapulted through the rankings, fighting guys that were good stylistic matchups for him. Like CM Punk got to the UFC because he's entertaining.
Yeah.
Chael Sonnen lost a 185-pound championship match, and his next fight was a 205-pound championship match because he's entertaining. And I'm not, again, not digging on any of these guys. And people would sit back and be like, what the fuck, blah, 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 blah. Like, and I'll even own this. When CM Punk got started the UFC, I was kind of like, what the fuck? I'm dedicating years and years and years of my life. This dude barely trains, and he got an opportunity. But it's very short lived because I'm not going to sit here and bitch about that. I'm going to sit here and go, how do I get those opportunities too? How do I get hooked up? And so instead of sitting there and bitching about it, I figured out a way to put that energy into something constructive. And that was me building the character of Bulletproof Troop, which brought me from fighting back to my first love of professional wrestling. I essentially created a professional wrestling personality in combat sports. And and it's the exact same thing I'm doing now in pro wrestling. But so, and I kind of, because Troop, like I said, I based it around a lot of like military esque type stuff. I didn't serve in the military or anything, but I say the troop. I didn't choose the troop life. The troop life chose me. Like I said, it's on my birth certificate. Where I built a lot of things around that, and then came up with different sayings and catchphrases and so
Yeah.
forth. Like I don't see my logo. It's right here on my pants, a little hand grenade. I say known for dropping warheads on people's foreheads. These guns don't come with a safety. Like blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
My finisher, I call it the hand grenade. I pull the pin, I wind up, and I punch people in the face. And I just created a cohesive brand uh, to be entertaining in combat sports and to stand out. Like I started walking around with a big grenade chain that's like 10 pounds. It's like a legitimate chain with a real grenade on it with the gunpowder taken out. And I was doing that back in 2016. I've been doing it for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it all started was because I realized that if I was able to put creative effort into being more entertaining with my appearances, when they were talking shit, cutting promos, I stand out everywhere. That I would more than likely it would help my career almost more than I don't want to say more than anything. Because the first three most important things of being a fighter, it's being able to fight, being able to fight, and being able to fight. You can't do those three things. It don't fucking matter how entertaining you are. But if you could do that and you could be entertaining. But so that's kind of how I came about creating the persona, and then it's definitely been refined and evolved over the last decade.
Okay.
But that's how the creative process began.
And I know in professional wrestling, there's always a heel and a baby face. Which one do you think that your persona is?
So I don't think it's as black and white as a heel and a baby face.
Okay.
Because there's kind of guys that are what they call tweeners. Like Stone Cold Steve Austin was a heel, but the people fucking loved him.
Yeah.
Where it's like kind of, and so the way it's also been described to me is like, you're not a bad guy. You're just kind of a fucking asshole, tough guy. You know what I'm saying? Like Stone Cold, and people got behind that because a lot of people could relate to hating their boss and being anti-corporate and blah, blah, blah. Like, fuck y'all, I'm drinking beers.
Yeah.
So I would say that's mostly where I feel like I would place myself.
Okay.
I think in the ring performing, I like to be both sides of it, but operating in a place where in independent professional wrestling, a lot of the guys are not big. I'm 6'4", 235, 240 pounds. I'm significantly bigger than the majority of the people I've ever gotten in the ring. Very few people, if you looked at us, you'd be like, man, that guy stands a chance. Most guys look at you like, dude, this dude's going to maul him. And so as a result, it's hard for me to play the baby face because it's hard to get sympathy. If you see a little guy in there, like, come on, little guy, go underdog. And I also don't do a bunch of really cool, flashy moves. I don't do flips and shit and all this. Like I come out and I beat people up. I do MMA type stuff. So it fits better, in my opinion, in the heel type moves and the way that the matches are structured. Where like let them do some cool shit, and then I start beating their ass for a while. Then they do a comeback. I enjoy playing both sides, though. I do like being a face as well. And I started to develop a handful of things to be able to apply my techniques and moveset in a way that can build anticipation and get the crowd excited to see it, like build what we call like big pop moments, or versus just putting the guy down where they kind of build up, get their ass kicked, build up, get their ass kicked. I like both sides of it, and I feel like I can play both fairly well at this point in time. So, but to answer your question, I'd say I'm kind of like a tweener, like Stone Cold Steve Austin. Was same with The Rock. Was Rock a good guy or bad guy?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh yeah.
So I would say that's what I would relate with most. But it also depends on whom I working that night. Am I working a guy who's a big over baby face? Am I working a guy who's a very established heel. And I think in real life, I'm kind of a combination of the two as well. Very positive, motivational, blah blah blah, but also talk a little bit of shit, like be kind of
Okay.
a dick, or like. But I wouldn't even say a dick. Was Stone Cold Steve Austin a dick? Was he just like a fucking badass tough guy? Like
So if you're a big tweeter, which one is I was do you think it's hard to get a reaction out of
yeah,
fans?
I
If
think it's
you
harder to be a baby face
yeah,
because you got to be able to get the crowd behind you, connect with the crowd in terms of building an emotional investment from the crowd.
yeah,
I think as a heel, if you got a good baby face, it's easy. They get them behind you, smash this dude back down, talk your shit, blah blah blah. I think it's much harder to create the connection with the crowd than it is to create a negative connection with the crowd. You can walk out and be like, shut up, smack a poster out of somebody's hand. Like, that's easy to do. Like,
yeah.
how are you going to get these people to love you? I think it's much easier to make people hate you than it is to make people love you. I think a babyface is a significantly harder role to play in professional wrestling.
Okay. So you are with your main state with it's ROW.
Yeah, correct.
And I know they work with the WWE sometimes.
Correct. So they work very closely. They're a WWE ID program school.
Okay.
And maybe 2 weeks ago, we had two shows. On Friday, we had a WWE ID showcase show, and then we had Reality of Wrestling's television show. The WWE showcase show was almost entirely WWE talent, and then the next day on the Raw show, a handful of WWE talent. So they're very close in terms of a working relationship. And then, as you know, Booker's the commentator for NXT, two-time
Yeah.
Hall of Famer, coach on WWE LFG. So, like, there's a very close relationship on the surface and behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't necessarily know a ton about, but I know that they are very, very intertwined with each other. Not necessarily like the same people work there, but they're all very close and know each other and talk and so
Yeah.
forth.
So have you ever got an opportunity to work with the WWE in some capacity?
So I have worked maybe 5 or 6 times as extra talent for the WWE,
Okay.
but I have not been able to get inside of the ring, and I have not had a tryout as of now. But I'm making some moves on some things, and I'm excited for the future.
So like what kind of extra work did you do for the WWE?
So I was a security guard a couple times. I don't know if you remember the time when. Do you watch a lot of WWE?
Yes, I do.
There was a time when Charlotte Flair came out and beat up Tiffany Stratton, and then she like stood on top of the commentary table. And do you remember that? I was on a SmackDown.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I was one of the security guards, and I was the closest one to her. And I thought she was about to smack me at one point in time, just because it's in the moment. Like, but so, and like I had a bunch of people hit me up. I have a friend who works for Sports Illustrated. It's like, is this you? Because there's a picture of her on top of the table. I'm like right there.
Yeah.
That was the biggest one. There was another time when there was I want to say I was in Seattle, and there was a match with like Motor City Machine Guns, Street Profits.
Okay.
I'm gonna say there were like two other people. It was like a tables, ladders, and chair match on just like I want to say it was a SmackDown. Might have been a Raw. I don't know. But so they had a ladder spot where they put a ladder between the barricade and the ring, and somebody went through it. They put us in the front row, me, another male wrestler, and two female wrestlers, so the fans were safe, and we could like hold this thing and make sure it stayed in place for when they ended up using it. So the fans are safe. Trying to think if there's anything else that I did where I'm like noticeable. Thing is about going to do extra work is they may use you, they may not.
Yeah.
I think those are the two big ones I did. But I got to work. I got to see a bunch of stuff. Like I got to see John Cena, and I want to say it was Logan Paul against Cody Rhodes, and I want to say it was Jay Uso or something at the time. So I got to see John Cena multiple times on his retirement tour
Oh
in
God.
person, like basically 5 rows from ringside. I didn't go out there and watch and stuff. Remember when R Truth did Ron Cena? I was there that night.
Oh, that is.
Um, I worked WrestleMania as well when Jacob fought. What was that one? 2 years ago, the one night Jacob Fatu won the uh, U.S. title.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jeez, you did it
It was with,
all.
it was with Seth Rollins,
Yeah.
um, Roman Reigns, and CM Punk. When CM Punk first had his WrestleMania main event on day one of WrestleMania, I don't know, 2 years ago or so, 3 years
Yeah.
ago maybe. I worked that night as well. I didn't do anything, but I was there backstage. And I got paid to be there.
So if you if something does happen with the WWE, would you rather go to NXT first, or would you want to just go right to the main
Well,
roster?
you know, that's not a decision that I'm necessarily there to make.
Okay.
I believe that NXT is an incredible platform for young talent to learn and grow before being thrown into the big leagues with the big boys
Mhm.
of Raw or SmackDown. But he asked me, man, I'd rather debut on Raw or SmackDown. But at the same
Oh yeah.
time, I don't know if that's A, realistic, or B, the
Mhm.
smartest move for the longevity of a career when NXT's intended to develop talent before they go into there, because once NXT, you got some time to learn some stuff. If you mess up, you're not messing up in front of millions of people like you would be if you were doing it on Raw or whatever.
Yeah.
So the ambitious guy in me says, yeah, debut me on Raw in the main event.
Hmm.
But the um, realistic person in me, or like the long term career oriented thought process, would be to go to NXT. I'm also 38 years old, so my shelf life in terms of
Yeah.
professional wrestling or mixed martial arts isn't as long as a lot of the guys in WWE. Not saying that means I gotta get catapulted to the big shows, but I definitely don't have a bunch of time to waste. Not
Yeah.
like out of time, but I have time to waste. So I think being realistic, I'd probably go to NXT for however long and really try and develop my big league television skills and wrestling abilities before going to the main roster. I think it's realistically what would happen.
Yeah.
But again, not my call. And I'm going to listen to the people that do this on the big times and already deal with all this stuff. I'm not going to sit here and try and I'll definitely make demands or even like ask. Like, it depends what they want me to do. I'm a very coachable athlete and very open to, how do we win championships? How do we do that? Let's do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and act like I know it all because there's people that know it way the fuck better than me.
Hmm.
Um, so whatever they want to do. But if you ask the ambitious me, man, I want to debut on main event of Raw. Bring me on main event WrestleMania. Uh, but
So you mentioned that you went to Japan for an MMA fight, but
correct.
there's New Japan wrestling out there too.
Correct. So I fought for K1 September 7th of 2025.
All right.
And K1, if I don't know how much combat sports you watch, but K1 is a kickboxing league.
Yeah.
But what was interesting about my fight for K1, it was MMA rules. The last time K1 had an MMA bout was back in 2006 when Brock Lesnar fought
Oh
for
wow.
K1 at K1 Dynamite in Los Angeles, a fight I was actually at. And they wanted to bring back it's called Heroes Rules.
Hmm.
They were considering bringing it back, and so they brought me in because I'm a big, loud personality, and they wanted to make waves
Okay.
regarding this return, which we absolutely did. Like I said, we fight at press
Oh yeah.
conference, fight at a press conference, fight during the rules meeting, double disqualification inside of the ring, and plus all of the lead up smack talk. Like we had posts that were getting, I want to say we probably had cumulative social media posts with both our pages, like a couple million views. So they brought me out there to help uh, bring attention to the potential return of the Heroes rule set into K1. Now, September 7th of 2025.
Oh wow, okay. Right now, the wrestling is rolling up right now. You got you got NXT out there, you got WWE out there, you got AEW, TNA.
TNA's been making moves too. I think TNA had been,
Yeah,
I don't want to say necessarily overlooked, but it seems like TNA was a big powerhouse for many years. And I think it's been a staple within the professional wrestling industry.
yeah.
But it seems like they got a TV deal now, and I think that they are making a big resurgence. They got a bunch of great talent. Like I said, a television deal where I think TNA is a potentially overlooked brand by a lot of people in the industry right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're doing big things. People want to talk smack about where professional wrestling is at, but there's some big options. AEW's paying big. TNA can get on TV. NXT, WWE brought back Evolve, so even on the lower levels and the
Yeah,
building steps of getting to the big shows, Ring of Honor's back. It may be under AEW, but I mean, still a
yeah. It's
really big promotion. It might not have the same distribution it had, but it carries a certain pedigree. NWA, another amazing company that has gotten a distribution deal. Which, if y'all ain't watching NWA, check out NWA. NWA is, I want to say, probably my favorite independent wrestling level, or like one of the major shows of any of the content out there. And it might even be one of my favorites to watch, even those included.
oh wow, okay. What I really appreciate you coming on. It's it's been a blast talking to you, and you're welcome back anytime you want.
Awesome, Jen. I appreciate it. I'm working on some things right now. And if things solidify and come through like I believe that they will, I'll let you know and I'll come on here and then we can talk about it again. Jen, it was a pleasure to chat with you. And like I said earlier, my man, I am so stoked to see you not letting anything hold you back and going out and building your passions and doing what the fuck you want to do and not letting anything stop you, brother. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. Shout out to your fans and anybody who wants to check me out. You can find me at Bulletproof Troop on Instagram. Get over to bulletprooftroop.com. Pick yourself up some merch. Comment, like, share at Bulletproof Troop on YouTube. Big Troop 22 on X. For all my fans out there known for dropping warheads on people's foreheads. Bang, bang, Bulletproof Gang. We coming, baby. Wow.